Today I'm going to step you through how to make quilted bunting. This is a super cute and easy way to elevate any celebration, and it's one of the most beginner-friendly projects that I know. So you have no excuses not to give it a try. I'll be making some happy birthday bunting today, but you can make bunting for any celebration such as Christmas, Easter, or just everyday home decor. Feel free to use the timestamps below to navigate through this video. I'll be covering off on why the bunting should be your next sewing project, what supplies you'll need, a step-by-step tutorial of how to create the bunting, and a little bonus tip for storing the bunting, and then finally I'll give the reveal of the bunting that I created. This was such a fun project. I am so excited to show you, and I'm so excited for you to make your own. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Alex. I post fashion and sewing content here on YouTube. So follow along for more content like this, and if you enjoy this video, then please do boop the like button below. Let's get into it. So why should this bunting be your next sewing project? Well, there's a few reasons why I love it. Firstly, it's a quick and easy sew. You can definitely knock this one over in a weekend or even in a few hours if you're pressed for time. And the sewing of the bunting is not complicated, so it's super beginner friendly. Secondly, you're creating something which in my mind is like a family asset. It's something that you can use for years to come and whip out on multiple occasions throughout the year as needed. It's something that is homemade with love, and it's unique and one of the kind. And if you have kids, maybe them putting it up is something that could become sentimental and a really nice tradition for them to enjoy over the years. I also love this bunting because it is a more sustainable way to approach decorating for celebrations rather than going out and buying cheap plastic decorations which inevitably get ruined or thrown in the bin each time a birthday comes around. You can simply create this bunting and then it will last you for a really long time, especially if you take good care of it. Also, this project would be really good as a scrap buster if you wanted to spend a little bit more time on it, patchworking, things like that. Finally, I love this bunting because you can personalize it as much as you want. As I've already mentioned, you could create bunting for many different types of celebrations, but also even within celebrations you can pick your own color theme, you can pick the font that you use. You could also personalize birthday bunting, for example, with someone's name if you wanted to. So what will you need for this project? Well, for the supplies, you'll need a sewing machine, and honestly, you could hand sew this, I reckon, but I'm a machine girly, so we'll be using a sewing machine in this video, but yeah, just keep that in mind. Other supplies that you'll need obviously are thread, fabric scissors, paper scissors, paper and printer. You'll need a needle and thread obviously, and then you'll also need some fabric. You'll need fabric for the shape of the flag, both the front and the back, and then you'll also need fabric for the letters that you're putting on the bunting, if you're putting any letters on the bunting. So yeah, just pick some colors that you think work together for your desired project. I can't remember how much fabric I needed off the top of my head. I'll note in the description how much fabric you approximately need for each flag. So to calculate how much fabric you need, just multiply that number by the number of flags that you're going to be using in your bunting. You'll also need some bias tape, and that is to string the flags together. You could also use some sort of string if you wanted to, but I think the bias tape really ties it together quite nicely. And you can obviously buy bias tape or you can make your own, so I'll leave that up to you. An optional supply is batting or interfacing, just to add some more structure to your flags, but as I said, you don't need this. You can definitely just stick with the fabric if you want to. And if you want, some cardboard can also be helpful for tracing the pattern. In terms of a pattern, you don't need a specific pattern for this project. You can just create flags to a size that is to your own liking, and you can eyeball that as you go along. But if you find it helpful, I will be giving the exact measurements for what I use throughout this video, and also I have created a free PDF pattern of the exact measurements I use, so if that's helpful to you, then definitely check that out in the link in the description. Great, let's get into how you create the bunting. So firstly, you need to create a template for the letters and the flags. You can use my free PDF download below, or you can copy what I'm doing here on screen, printing out the letters in Happy Birthday. I use the Verdana Pro Black, font bolded in font size 500 here if you were wondering. This was a clean looking font which was easy to cut out and to sew, but you can use whatever font or size you would like. Once I had cut out all of the letters, I could prepare the template for the flag. Again, you can use my free PDF pattern, link in description, or you can measure out some flags to any size you wish. I used the printed letters as a guide for the size of the flag, and then I just used a ruler to measure out a rectangle first, and then I cut this out. Then I measured a triangle at the bottom of the rectangle and cut that out to create the flag template. I've cut the pattern out in cardboard for some extra stability, but feel free to use paper instead. Once I cut it out, I double checked all the letters fit nicely, and then it was time to prep and cut the fabric. For this project, I used an assorted selection of colourful pastel fabric in cotton. These are naturally colours that I gravitate towards, but you can use whatever fabric and patterns you would like. However, note that woven fabric is best for this project. To prep the fabric, make sure you iron out any crinkles and then plan out what combinations of fabrics you would like to use for the letters and the flags, and in what order. Then you can get into it. To make a flag, trace your letters onto fabric using an erasable fabric marker or tailor's chalk. If you want to directly cut the fabric without tracing it, you can definitely do that, but I just did it this way for extra precision. Cut out the fabric, taking care in tight corners. Next, trace the flag onto fabric using the same marker. You need 2 layers fabric per flag for the front and the back, so I found it easy to fold the fabric before tracing it, and then pin the 2 layers together to cut it out neatly. Give your fabric a final iron, and then you've prepped your first flag. Repeat this process for all the letters in your project. I'm spelling out happy birthday here, so I had 13 flags to prep. But if you're writing Merry Christmas or you're spelling someone's name, then you'll obviously have a different number. Just an interlude to say here, if you can plan all your colours out in advance, then you can cut out your flags in batches, as I'm doing here. You can't really do this for the letters unless you have a lot of double ups, but even doing it just for the flags can save you quite a bit of time. Once you've prepared all of your flags, there is one more optional step before you start sewing. If you would like, you can put a layer of cotton batting in each flag. It doesn't make too much of a difference to the look of the flag, but it does make a big difference to the feel of the flag. So here I am trimming 1 centimeter off the sides and bottom of the flag template to use to cut the batting. Trimming it down makes it easier to cut the flags with shearing scissors later down the line, as it keeps the batting out of the way. Once you have cut out all the batting, you can baste it to the outer fabric using a basting spray or any method of your choosing. Then mark a few centimeters from the top of each flag to line up your letters, and place your letters on the flag. You can use some fabric glue if it helps you keep the letter aligned, or use pins, or you can just place the letter on top of the flag, as is, if you are feeling confident. Now you are ready to sew the front of the flags. Sew the letter to the front of the flag and the batting layer. Simply stitch along the inside edge of the letter as close as you can to the edge to prevent excess fraying. Take care turning around the corners of the letters. Once you have sewn around the perimeter of the letter, trim any excess thread, iron the flag front, and start the next letter. Then you are ready to sew the next letter, and you should repeat this process for all the letters. If you are wondering, this sewing technique is called raw edge applique, and as you can see, it is super beginner friendly as it doesn't require complex quilting patterns to achieve letters and designs. If you are interested in raw edge applique, you should definitely check it out. because there are lots of different approaches, such as using embroidery or zigzag stitches around the edge, and it is also common to use fusible interfacing or webbing to support the fabric not to fray. For this project, as it is going to be carefully stored away and only used a few times a year, I wasn't too worried about interfacing, but it is definitely good practice to know. Once you have sewn all the letters on, you are ready to sew the flags. For my bunting, I placed the fabric wrong sides together and I kept everything in place with some clips before sewing along the sides and bottom of the flag, leaving the top open. I used a 1 cm seam allowance for this. Once you have sewn around the edges, you can use some shearing scissors to trim the bottom and sides. This is easy to do as you won't have to cut through the batting layer. That's your completed flag, and you can now repeat this process for all of the letters. By the way, I decided to have sheared edges because I liked the fun aesthetic of it, but if you want a cleaner look, you can totally sew your flags wrong sides together and then flip them out through the top to have enclosed edges. It's totally up to you. Once you have finalised your flags, give them a final press and you are ready to sew them together. To attach all of the flags, you can use some bias tape or you can create your own tape. I actually had some pale pink fabric strips lying around from another project that I used. This was a 5 cm wide strip and I folded it in half over the tops of the flags, using a few clips to hold it in place. I used an erasable fabric marker to mark a 5 cm space between the seams of each flag, as you can see here. I found this to be the easiest method for ensuring the flags were neat and evenly spaced. Once I had clipped all the flags in place, I sewed down the length of the pink tape, making sure I sandwiched the flags in both sides of the tape as I went. This is one of the most satisfying parts of the whole project, watching the bunting finally come together. Finally, iron off the pen markings, and then your bunting is complete and ready to be hung at your next celebration. Well done! Now you've finished your bunting, congratulations. I hope that you love it as much as I do. I do have a quick bonus tip for how you can store the bunting. So I have created this little quilted zipper pouch for my bunting and it's perfect for storing it in there. It keeps everything nice and well protected and neat. It means the bunting won't get tangled or ruined by dust if it's sitting in my cupboard for a while, and I can easily pull it out whenever I need it. I also think it's a nice little finishing touch and it really makes it feel like a finished product. If you enjoyed this tutorial and you're looking for other beginner sewing projects, then please check out my upcoming video about how to make a makeup bag. Thanks everyone, I hope you have a super awesome day.